Hey everybody, welcome back to My Pinball Machine Collection as we take a closer look at another game in My Pinball Machine Collection. I'm good, huh? Today's game is a pretty good one also as far as nostalgia is concerned. Not so much for this one, but for the game it is based on, and that kind of carries over and mixes together. This is The Getaway, and if you look closely underneath the title, High Speed 2. The first High Speed is the game I'm talking about. If we're taking a look at my pinball machine addiction, game playing, etc., you really need to take a look at High Speed, because High Speed was the game that really got me playing the game of pinball.
Dispatch, this is 504, Getaway, over.
In 1986, I would walk into an arcade called Putt Putt Golf and Games, which I know a lot of you have heard me talk about because it was my second home growing up. And in the corner of this arcade, I saw this game called High Speed. I knew it was a pinball machine, but I saw a lot of people crowded around it. Couldn't quite figure out what was going on. But I saw this red siren light at the top, and I saw this sort of police car theme, and that really attracted me initially. There's just the look of the machine. But then, when I got closer and I started watching these guys play, I heard them say, "Hey man, you gotta run the red lights. You gotta hit all these targets to light the red light, and then you gotta run the red light to get the jackpot from the cops." And I sat there and I go, well, that's pretty cool.
Pull over.
This was one of the first games that really had a beginning, middle, and end kind of storyline to complete. And I think that was what was attractive to me. And now I started paying attention to pinball. And the Williams games that came after it, Pinbot, Cyclone, F-14 Tomcat, I played a lot. And so that kind of started things for me, and there's been no looking back ever since. High Speed 2, The Getaway, is the sequel to High Speed. If you take a look on the playfield, and if you're familiar with High Speed, you will find it is very similar, both in its design and very similar in the rules. If you take a look here, you have a stoplight, green, yellow, and red. And if you remember my impression of those guys, "Oh, dude, all you gotta do is change a light." Well, guess what? All you gotta do is change the light. There's a bunch of targets here that correspond to that light, and by hitting the green, green, and green, yellow, 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 all the way down the line, you will move the lights up here.
Dispatch, this is 504, suspect running a red light, over.
And the cops start to chase you, and your goal is to lock 3 balls, and then you get multi-ball, and then you get the jackpot, and there's the whole deal. And it's really a lot of fun, and very reminiscent of the original game. In fact, the design here is very similar. You got your RPMs and stuff here in the center, but you have a couple of other things that were not in the original, and that is a small amount of modes, a short amount of modes, leading to kind of a mini wizard mode. When you redline, in other words, when you shoot these RPM lanes over and over again, they're mostly the loops, the RPM loops, you'll move these lights up and eventually you'll redline, and then you have to use the shifter here, which is the plunger on the game. You have to use the shifter in order to cool yourself down and move to the next gear. And when you do that, it then moves the gears up here, and then eventually you'll actually get to Redline Mania, which is the final sort of mode in the game, and that's kind of what you're shooting for in the game, as well as the locks and the jackpots. The other gears here are really cool. There's just, 3 million here. This one holds bonus. This one lights the video mode. And it's kind of fun because you're actually being chased down the highway and you need to sort of zoom in and out of the cars and make it to the end without getting hit, and if you can, you get a special bonus. It's really fun. The next gear is the Supercharger, and that's another thing we need to talk about because it is really freaking cool in this game. The Supercharger is right up this left ramp, but when the Supercharger is lit, instead of going up and back, it actually zooms around this metal ramp. There's a bunch of magnets in there, and it makes the car look like it's zooming around a track. Sometimes you get 2 balls in there at once and you can juggle them around. It's really fun. The Supercharger is really, really cool. You also have some, simple generic things, like you got 3 pop bumpers up here in the same place that they were pretty much in High Speed. Up in this corner, you have the Burn Rubber, which is kind of a mystery award. It gives you a special award based on where you end up on the map. And if you take a look, it has the good old siren line on the top, just like the original game. And to be honest with you, when that thing is going off in your game room or in your basement, It's really fun because it literally lights up the entire thing, and I love the siren light. And I think that's supposed to be Steve Ritchie, who is the designer, sitting in the car there. If you've ever heard the story about how and why he developed High Speed, it has to do with a very similar story where he basically was running his car at 1,000,000 miles an hour and got pulled over by the cops. And he's got a really cool story about it. And so he carried that story over into the sequel, except this time there's helicopters and people shooting at you and a whole bunch of great stuff. The dot matrix display looks really great. There's some nice animations and stuff that obviously they didn't and couldn't do with the original High Speed, which had alphanumeric and digital displays. And if you hold down the start button on the Getaway, you will hear it try to start. And you could hold it down and it would keep starting. That's pretty cool. I wonder if you could flood this game. Huh. And of course, we can't forget the awesome music by ZZ Top. So again, there's a lot of little touches in this one that I really like that improved upon the original a lot, to the point where I enjoy playing the Getaway more so than High Speed. Not by much though. High Speed is so nostalgic to me, it gets very tricky for me not to want to buy one, but I like Getaway, and I think I'm just going to stick with that one for now. Now, the Getaway was released in 1992, and this was during sort of the peak of the pinball upswing. Games like Addams Family and stuff from that time just exploded in sales, and the Getaway did very, very well at over 13,000 units. I played the Getaway at really only one other place that I can think of, and it was this little restaurant bar called Nunzi's. And in the corner they had a Getaway, and I remember it was one of those games that like the owner was a huge fan of, and so he wouldn't trade it off and get another game. They kept it there for a long time. I remember playing it a hell of a lot there whenever I would go there because this place wasn't too far from me. I picked up this Getaway in 2002, and I remember it very well because I kind of picked up 3 games at once and had them delivered by the same company from 2 different places. One of them was my Taxi, which we talked about. If you take a look here on the playfield, nothing's really too chipped up. There's very little wear on this playfield, and sometimes these inserts get pretty beat. But also, the other biggest thing for me was this cabinet is not faded. See how there's this bright red on the sides and in the front? You'll see just completely washed out in white faded cabinets, and this one really, as far as I can tell, has very, if any, little fade at all, and I was really psyched up about that. From years of looking for a Getaway and seeing them faded up, I was pretty excited to see that this one was not. Everything else on it has been great, and I've been very happy with it. Anyway, that's my Getaway. It's one of the few Steve Ritchie games that I have in my collection as of this time, and I'm a fan of his designs as well. And if you get a chance to find this one or even the original High Speed, definitely give it a try. It's very addicting and a lot of fun. All right, gang, until next time, this is Chris Bucci saying, see ya.